Hey there, it's Joanna Klein, your host for the Sassy, Sexy, and 60 online retreat, where we believe women 60 and over have earned the right to feel comfortable in their own skin. Today's session is called Celebrate Your Sexual Self After 60. So from everything I've read, there is no reason why we shouldn't have a healthy and satisfying sex life in our later years. I'm also hearing that those people in their 60s who are in newer relationships tend to say that they have a really happy sex life, more so than, I guess, people who have been together for a longer period of time. But it doesn't mean that everyone can have a happy, satisfying sex life, which is one of the topics of this session today. I know for me, I fall into the new relationship category. I've been in a relationship now for 3.5 years, and definitely see myself showing up differently in this relationship. The fact that I feel so much more empowered and comfortable to share what works for me has led to me feeling much more satisfied and excited about sex, and being with a man who also accepts my strength and allows for my femininity has been what I find to be quite sexy as well. We live in two different areas, and I think that definitely enhances it. So I feel like there's so many more options available to us at this age. If you're looking into a new relationship, it's like there's so many ways to go about it. For those who are in a long-term relationship, and want some ways to spice it up, well, there's plenty of stuff out there, and I think Dr. Patty's going to give us a little bit of taste of that as well. So if you're experiencing any kind of issues that's keeping you from feeling sexual, and if you're in that sense of looking for a new relationship or wanting to be in a relationship again, but questioning whether or not that's even an option for you, or whether or not you still have it in you. So let's hear a little bit more about that, because according to Dr. Patty, yes, we all do. So let's hear a bit more about Dr. Patty first. Dr. Patty is a clinical sexologist, sexuality educator, and the pioneer of sex coaching with top-level credentials. As a well-respected world leader in sexology, she is an academic, author of 5 books, popular speaker, trainer, and workshop leader, and hosts over 40 DVDs for couples' sexual enhancement. She is a frequent guest on summits, national television shows, documentaries, live talk and news radio, and magazines such as Cosmopolitan, Men's Health, and Women's Health. She has a private practice in the Los Angeles area and via Skype globally. Dr. Patty is the co-founder of Sex Coach U, the world's premier credentialing and training organization for sex coaching. Dr. Patty believes that women and men have a divine birthright to experience their sexual power, eroticism, and ultimate pleasure. Find her online at drpattybritton.com and sexcoachu.com. Dr. Patty, thank you for being here with us today. I know you have a really busy schedule, so thanks for fitting us in.
Absolutely. This is important.
Yes, it is. So I'm curious if we could start off with your story.
Well, it goes way back. When I'm asked that question, my mind goes into really a long time ago in terms of family and cultural values, because I think those impart and inform who we become as adults. And I think I grew up in a very permissive, sex-positive environment in many ways, but also I'm a graduate of being a child of the love generation of the 60s. You know, I'm really kind of an old hippie, and who maybe became something else. I don't really know, but that lives in me. That part of me still is there, and sex is part of our humanity. It's an essential, natural part of who we are as human animals and human beings. And so there's something about always being pro-sex, always being that person that people felt comfortable telling their deepest, darkest secrets about their love life to. It's just, many of us who are sexologists or sex therapists, educators, counselors, or coaches say the same thing. Like, everybody always came to me and felt like they could tell me anything about their sexuality, which is a bigger story than sex. Sex is the expression of our sexual energy. But what really happened that I think is germane is that earning my doctorate and getting my doctorate, PhD in human sexuality, like over 25 years ago, having come out of that process of learning and of growing, having already been in the field of sexual wellness at really national levels and organizations, that doctorate informed me about what sex therapy is. Always with a foundation as a sexuality educator, I've come at this field of sexology, which is our broad tent that we all work under. But really in the early 90s, I had met Thomas Leonard, and sex coaching became a derivative of that awakening for me, because I have a study buddy in the coaching arena who was a life coach and personal coach. And Thomas Leonard really is the father of coaching beyond athletic coaching. He started coachu.com. Hence, all of these derivatives of coaching became available. And what's a distinction for me in sex coaching is that we actually are not a derivative of coaching, but rather we are a derivative of sexology. So we are sexuality specialists. And taking a look at all of how sex therapy was done and sexuality counseling has been done, especially with the training in my doctoral program, it became clear to me that it didn't fit for me, because I've always looked at life from a very holistic perspective. And so what happened is I actually married tried and true sex therapy, counseling, and education methodologies with the how of working with a client as a coach. And that marriage is really what birthed sex coaching. And so it's a very different way of, as we say, creating and holding space with a client or a student and really helping them become all that they can be. That's what I love about coaching. It's so elevating. It's like bringing out the good in people and their highest potential, and resolving the difficulties, which I call roadblocks. Sometimes they're boulders in the road, sometimes they're little pebbles that I assist them in removing. But that's really become my passion. And not only my passion at delivering sex coaching to my clients, but most of my work in the world today is training others who then can be part of sex coaching as really a certified profession. And so that's really what kind of got me started.
Wow, what a great story. So what can people expect from sex coaching?
Well, sex coaching is a discipline or a profession that helps people overcome their sexual roadblocks and difficulties. And it's really a methodology and a system to get people to heal, to become whole, to find out, who am I really? What do I really want, need? And how can I express myself as a sexual being? And notice it's a sexual being, not a sexual doer. And I think that's so important, because our sexuality is essentially who we are. Sex is a way that we express that, whether it's alone or with a partner or partners, because we are living in a world today where the monogamous two people heteronormative relationship is really not the norm all around the world anymore. And we're seeing different trends that are taking place, including the trend of polyamory, for example, more than one love. And so there are all kinds of phenomena that are happening in the background or the context of where our sexuality and our sexual expression shows up. And, you know, I'm really biased. I think that I have this expression that I use when I'm training my professionals at Sex Coach University, and that is, don't ever be guilty of the Humpty Dumpty effect. And what I mean by that is that, remember that nursery rhyme, Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall, all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. And the image was like this weird gender neutral person who was an egg who was smiling. Then he falls off and the egg cracks open and breaks, and he can't reassemble himself. And so this is really my mission and my passion, to train competent professionals who are compassionate and caring and well-trained and hopefully certified through my program, who then really can assist somebody who does fall apart. Because sexuality and our sex story is very layered and very deep. It's not a simple fix like putting on an acrylic nail if you have a chip in your nail. It's the whole person, and my work is whole person centered. So sex coaching can really train people to accommodate whatever a client should bring to them and help them, notice, help them heal, help them become whole, help them put themselves back together again. We are not the people who put people back together again. We create the container to assist them in putting themselves. That's what empowerment is really all about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what sexual empowerment is about as well. Being at choice, knowing who you are, and being able to live that life fully.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And it's totally consistent with what this retreat is all about, around really encouraging women to recognize they can be in control of their own lives, and they can feel empowered to live their best life. So,
here's another thing I want to say.
Sure.
To all you women who are watching and listening, you deserve it. And I think what I see in my clinical work is a sense of, I don't deserve pleasure. I don't deserve to be loved. I might be in my 5th marriage. I have clients who've been, I do live near Hollywood. I have a lot of celebrity type clients in the entertainment industry who like on their 8th relationship and blah, blah, blah. And, I find it humorous. There's no judgment anywhere about this. I think it's beautiful. Whatever people consciously choose is fine, as long as there's consent involved between 2 adults. But really, I see so much about, I don't deserve this. I'm not entitled to this. And entitlement is a bad word right now. We're living in the wake of the Me Too era and generation and movement. And one of the things that I also want to share, as I'm kind of feeling into this, is that we're living in a time where we're demonizing men. And we really have to be careful about that, especially those of us as women who are heterosexual or bisexual, who want to partner with men as our lovers. And men are having a really hard time right now. They're not sure how to navigate even giving a hug to someone, much less becoming your lover. So there are things that are going on around us today that really infuse us with a sense of, what do I do about this? And what is it that I deserve? And you deserve pleasure. You deserve to be loved. You deserve to be sexual your whole life long. Because get this, there's science to demonstrate that we're sexual in utero. We have arousal capacity in utero as fetuses. Now we have to be advanced as fetuses. And so we used to say from birth to death, and now we say it's not conception, but it's really an advanced stage of our development in utero, where there are scientific studies that have shown that. But we really are entitled to be sexual until our last breath on earth. And I think that's so important to say to all of you who are watching, and to you as we're having this wonderful conversation, that sometimes we have the notion that we're too old, or it's too late, or we don't deserve because, okay, I'm wearing a long sleeve blouse, but if I weren't, you would see the crepe effect, right? And it's like, whose arm is that? I say to myself, whose legs are those? Even though I feel sexy and beautiful and hot, when I allow myself to tell myself that, or I see that reflected in the response I get verbally or behaviorally. But really, it's okay. It's okay, whatever shape or skin you're in, to celebrate your sexiness and to express that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well,
I went on a run there, I know.
And so many different things, and my mind is just going with all these questions. But I want to get to the point that you made about demonizing men, and what came up for me too is remembering, and I've had 3 marriages and divorces, and the using sex as a weapon. Using that as it's like, if I'm mad at my husband or my partner, then withholding that versus recognizing that it's something that benefits me to be in this state there, to be open to that, versus using it as something that's just that he wants and not something that I want. And
it's a power dynamic. And so, I love that, weaponizing sex, because what's really interesting when we look at a couple and we look at sexual couples, the person who has the power is the person with the power of no. And here we are living in this time when it's like, no, you have the power to say yes. Consent is really driving a lot of conversation and behavior. But really, the person who is refusing or withholding has the power to direct whether or not sex is going to happen, right? And when it's used as a weapon, it hurts everyone, because there's a backfiring effect. And part of the work I do with couples And it's sometimes really interesting to it's like pulling taffy apart. Not that we do that anymore, but those of us who ever did that. But there's something about pulling it apart and letting each person in the relationship look at as a selfish person, good word, selfish person. What am I getting out of this? I once had a couple where they came to see me. They were living together. She had given up a lot of her power in the world to be with this guy who also had a lot of power and money. And what happened is she was really withholding sex from him because she was so resentful, because she had given up her power. She made that choice to be with this guy. And he was like, you know what? Every day I expect oral sex, a blowjob. And they came in to see me, and she's like, I'm shut down. I have no sexual desire. I really resent having to do anything with him, and we're not having sex. And he's like, fix her. It was a very, very toxic relationship state that came in to see me. And part of the work I did was to pull them apart and say, so first of all, you, male, have the right, and in my framing of this, the responsibility to feed some of that sexual hunger by yourself, aka masturbation. And his response was, I've never masturbated in my life, and I'm not going to start now. That's why I have girlfriends and wives. And I took a deep breath and went, oh my God, this is not going to be my client. She is. And so we worked together. And in that beautiful, beautiful trajectory of empowerment and discussions around her pleasure, her wants, framing it so that she could shift the focus and say, what am I getting out of this? And getting goodies from it. Once she was able to see that and start pulling pleasure for herself and empowerment for herself, there's a lot of power in that relationship as well, everything changed. So you're really hitting on a note about this withholding pattern, because there is a power exchange in any sexual act, whether it's conscious or unconscious. And withholding, there was someone who once told me withholding is a form of lying as well. It's a very interesting, twist on what does withholding mean. And withholding is really anger, I gotta tell you, and not participation or showing up. And I'm about helping people show up for each other.
Absolutely, definitely, yes. And the other piece of it too, which you talked about, is the fact that our sexual energy, I mean, it's life force energy. It helps us stay young and youthful and vibrant. And so we should want it for ourselves, the selfish part of it. It's like one.
Absolutely. It's called chi. It's our chi or ki or life force energy.
Yes.
And it emanates from usually the second chakra or energy center of the body, which is the abdominal region. And it may encompass the middle region, which is the hara, the power center. And it may encompass the root chakra as well. But it's really the center of creativity. It's the center of our sexual energy as creative force. Listen, it can create human life. Think about that. And I say to my clients sometimes, especially couples when they're really shut down, they're like, yeah, sex, mechanical, obligatory, the worst kind of sex. I say, okay, I've got to let you look at it this way if you can. There's something amazing about one human being is putting a body part into the body of another human being. If you look at it that way, doesn't it kind of have sacred energy too? And they go, oh my God. And that's what we say at orgasm, many of us. Oh my God. This element of the sacred or the spirit or the energetics of sex is really where I anchor into, not imposing values on my clients or my students, not having it be in any way a spiritual imposition of a value system or a pathway, but looking at that as essence of self and our life force energy. And it is. And when we shut that down, bad things happen to our health.
Well, and let's talk about that. And there are women who are watching our session today who aren't in a relationship, or maybe are starting to venture out and start dating again and have some anxiety around it, or have gone dark, or have made a decision, no, I'm past the point of being able to be in a romantic relationship again. And I'm curious what advice you have for them.
Well, I have two pieces of advice, as I think this is a huge, huge topic. I could talk for about 2 hours if I push the button start and out it came, but I won't. Because masturbation is its own sexual outlet, self-pleasuring, solo sex, self-love. When I was a friend of, in the early days of my career as a sex coach and also a colleague, one of my dearest friends and influencers was Dr. Betty Dodson, who at one point was called the mother of masturbation. She's really a person who is about liberating female orgasm and female sexual empowerment at the deepest level. And I align with that, and I always have. And masturbation in some of her work is regarded as self-love. And I mean that with all the reverberation effects and vibrations of what love means. So it also is a path of wellness, because there is some truth to use it or lose it. And here's the bad news, ladies out there. If you don't use your sexual anatomy, if you're not running blood through, meaning having blood flow of arousal, meaning lubricating, meaning having tactile stimulation of the tissue other than what might be bathroom behavior, what's going to happen is you are going to atrophy, you are going to dry up, and what's going to happen is that juicy tissue is not going to be juicy anymore. And there may be pain, because as we age and we're post-menopause, perimenopause is a whole other horrible story, but post-menopause, the vaginal lining does thin and it can tear very easily, and it can be painful to have anything penetrate. And the reality is that there's so much toxic shame around our bodies, especially for women. Men have it too, but women have it a lot more deeply. And that toxic shame is that down there, that hidden part of our bodies that's covered by the bathing suit. That's how children used to be taught about their sexuality and their sexual anatomy. And so we need to really unearth ourselves. We need to look at ourselves. We need to do, I train all of my professionals to lead their clients into self-activities as home assignments, where you actually sit with a mirror with your pants off and you look at your genitalia lovingly, with reverence, with claiming that as you, because that's you, that's part of your body. No different from looking at your beautiful hand or the 8 spots on your beautiful hand. I look at them as their medals of honor of all the years that I have been on planet Earth and all the wisdom that I've gained and shared. Not as, ew, those spots. I actually look at myself sometimes. I call myself a giraffe. With this, it's like a playful way of looking at the age spots and going, oh my God, I've got more giraffe spots. Isn't that different from going, oh, I've got to get a cream to remove these, I'm old? No, stop that. Don't allow that kind of self-talk. But back to masturbation. So masturbation, not only is it its own healthy outlet, but it primes the pump for partner sex. It also gives you information about what you need, what you like in terms of partnered sex. And part of the shame that some of us have as we age is how we change anatomically. Some of us, maybe all of us, if we are not constantly lubricating or having daily orgasms and having that blood flow through the tissue, are seeing things like our inner labia or the inner lips fusing against the vulva. The vulva is when we open up, here's how we are on the outside, outer lips, outer labia. We open up, here's where a clitoral area is. I can't really do it without using other fingers. And this is known as the vulva, not the vagina. Don't call this the vagina. The vagina is a canal around here. And here's the urinary opening. And up here is the clitoris, which is a huge internal structure that has the head of the clitoris protruding or not protruding from the hood, which is actually analogous to foreskin. We're very similar to males. We're like inverted inside. So we have a huge capacity. We have over 8,000 nerve endings. Men have less than that in the head of their penis. So as we're developing in utero, we're very similar, but also we differentiate. So it's very important that we stimulate this part of our bodies so that it's healthy. What does healthy mean? It means there's blood flow. It means oxygen is flowing. It means we're lubricating and not drying out or drying up. These are the ravages of aging. And the shaming that we do to ourselves. Because if you used to have glorious inner lips that were like decorative drapery and you loved that or you hated it, that's a whole other discussion, then you're going to see they may be shrinking, they may be discolored, the coloration may not be as vivid as it once was. But these are part of not using it, and also part of aging. We do change. And then there's another thing that happens in aging that nobody talks about, and that is the descent of the bladder. We talk about urinary incontinence. We talk about how scared we are that we're going to, go, and then, oops, pee. And so, many of us run screaming and get the pads and, like, ew, the ew factor. But really, we need to also be doing our PCs. Those are the reps, sometimes called Kegels, to keep the pelvic floor strong, so that we're not having a descended bladder. And sometimes we need to recognize that we do. There also is something called, I'm going very medical. You want me to keep going?
No, absolutely. I think
this is really important, and nobody is
this is important stuff.
So the other thing that happens to women's bodies as we age related to our sexual anatomy is that we also tend to, if we're not having regular bowel movements, this is like, oh, we never talk about that part of our body. And we never talk about that, but it's part of owning and claiming your beautiful, wonderful machine. That's your body. And it's part of being well. Having wellness is essential to healthy aging and happy sex when we're older women. And so we can develop dryness in our poop. Our fecal matter may become dry. We may find we're more constipated. That's why many older people are taking supplements for stool softeners or laxatives. Be careful of that. Don't overdo that. Or colonics or coffee enemas. I have friends now doing coffee enemas and raving about it. And they're a lot younger than me. And I'm like, oh my God, because you're going to rehabituate your body. But here's the thing, you can get something called a rectocele, RECTOCELE, which is where the wall, so if I had the right demonstrator, which I don't right now, I hadn't planned to talk about this, but imagine that, this is the vaginal wall. So this is where perhaps a penis might be inserted through that opening of the vagina, the canal. On the other side could be a weakening of this wall so that the rectum and feces can build up in here, can be pushing against the wall and protruding into it, making sex painful. Nobody talks about this. Your GYNs aren't trained to talk about sexual pleasure. They're only trained to talk about dysfunction. They're trained to talk about mechanical breakdowns, which is great. We need them for that. We need them to do our pap smears. We need them to do the bimanual exam. We need them for validating our self-breast exam or doing whatever they do. But this is where we get into the part where there's silence. And I think that there are so many women who are older who feel so much shame and breakdown. They feel like they're broken. And they feel like, I could never have a lover at whatever age, whether they're in their 50s or 60s or 70s. I'm happy to say, to testify, I'll be 73 in November. This is 73. This is a well 73. This is a well taken care of 73. And this is a sexual 73, including frequent self-love, solo sex play, masturbatory play with toys or fingers, whatever you like. And there's a revolution going on today with sex toys called pleasure products. A revolution. There's so much out there today that's safe and healthy and enhancing. So this is a new era that we're all living in right now, and so much passion about our health.
Yeah, it's wonderful too. This is great. You mentioned about knowing ourselves, and another piece that I want to add to that, and I know that it's true for me now that I'm in my 60s, is I'm so much more able to feel comfortable asking for what I want and not expecting my guy to know, and recognizing how he's so happy to hear that from me. So it goes hand in hand. If we're going to know
Yeah,
what we want, then we can ask for what works for us and help our
absolutely.
partner know that.
One of the greatest deficits in the bedroom is talking about sex.
Mm.
And for many people, they can experience this, okay, tab A and slot B, without really being intimate. Intimate is really a vulnerable state of being seen and known. And it's usually emotional and energetic. But I hear people who can't say, I wish you would, or what I really want is. So many of my clients find that the barrier is talking about it, not doing it. And
Mhm.
so I love what you're saying, and I give everybody permission to A, you got to know what you want and need,
Mhm.
and then B, you got to ask for it. And sometimes it's nonverbal asking. Sometimes it's showing your partner. If you need direct clitoral stimulation, which 90% of women do in order to experience an orgasm, even with penetration in the vagina, then you need to take your partner's finger or hand or that toy that you're sharing and place it and move it in the way you need it on the clitoris. Usually it's not right on the clitoral bud or head or pearl, however you want to call it. Usually it's around it or above it or below it. And you have to discover what turns you on. You have to know what turns you on. That's knowing yourself,
Mhm.
because then you'll know what you want and what you need, and you can begin to ask for it verbally or non-verbally. But I'd also like to go back to the dating question you asked. Is that
Mhm.
okay?
Yes, absolutely.
This
Yes.
is also a toughie. How do I get back in the game?
Mhm.
Especially if you've had a failed sexual relationship, which so many people do. The number one epidemic that's going on in people's bedrooms in the United States and probably around the world is sexless relationships. Sexless. It's defined as less than 10 times per year. So that's less than once a month. I got to tell you, most of my couples who come and see me, and I have a very small private practice now because I'm running an online university in 68 countries. The reason that they're sexless is because of a multiplicity of reasons. Some of it physical, some of it emotional, some of it not knowing what to do, some of it aging and not addressing those things. But what also is happening is that they're not having sex at all, because when it stops working, what happens is aversion. When it's painful or it's not pleasant or you're not connected and it's that horrible, like mechanical kind of sex, like, oh gosh, it's Jimmy Fallon's on, it's 11:40, oh, we haven't had sex in 2 weeks, I guess we better have it now. Yes, that is not going to happen. Not going to be successful for most people. For some people it is, but most people not. But most of my clients haven't had sex for months or years. So it's like falling off track, right? It's like the train wreck. And the train is, you know, off the tracks, or you've fallen off the horse and you have to get back on. And you have to both be willing, and then you have to find ways. And that's so important for couples who have become sexless, because you stop wanting sex and you stop touching. And this, to me, is the most tragic part of this equation. Sexless leads to aversion to sex, leads to aversion to touching. And humans need touch to thrive. We know there's so many scientific studies about, well, the benefits of orgasm. I could go on about that, health benefits. But touch, you know, our hemoglobin raises. That's why we have pets. That's why we have certified cuddlists now. I don't know if you know that, but we have people who are certified cuddlists. They run cuddle parties
Mhm.
because we're starving for touch. Those of us who are alone don't have a readily available partner. There are also hookups that are happening. There are people who are, as I said, polyamorous, who have multiple relationships. There are older persons and women like us who choose, you know, I want an F buddy. I want a BFF with benefits. Whatever it is, it's all fine as long as you're making good, conscious, healthy choices for yourself.
Mhm.
But dating, again, it's a tough one, because in the United States in particular, we either live in a youth-oriented culture that celebrates youth, or we're accused of being cougars.
Mm.
which is predatory.
Mm.
So there's this weird rift, isn't there, between we're too old, everybody wants a younger woman. The guys my age are looking for a younger woman to take care of them. Guess what? I'm not interested in taking care of them.
Mm.
As a person in an equal relationship where we share values, beliefs, emotionally, physically, culturally, whatever, we could list all of the ways we might interact with a partnership and share. Of course, we want to take care of each other. But this is a phenomenon I'm noticing where these older men are looking for a younger woman because they're looking at their clock and going, ooh, mortality. And so we're entitled and we deserve to be with anyone we want. And I think there's a shift, especially if we take care of ourselves, for older women to be very appealing to multi-age. And it's not cougaring, because I really resent that term. I think that term really is, it has a judgmental tone under it, you know, which is, oh, you're going to come after this young guy and scoop him up. And I hear from a lot of younger men, they enjoy being with older women. Guess why? Because they know themselves. Just what you're saying. Because they know who they are. They're confident with who they are. They've accepted themselves. The journey of life is one to self-acceptance and self-love, as far as I see it. That's really the journey we're all on. There are other pieces to it, but that's part of it and a primary part. And often younger men, especially who are old souls, are men who want a woman who's self-realized. My goal is to help my clients, my students, anyone who comes in into my force field to learn how to self-realize. I call it sexual self-realization, becoming who you can be. That's that coaching mentality again. So dating is, you got to learn how to use technology. You've got to learn how to run your app. You've got to learn how to navigate the online dating world, which is, I've written articles about this that have been published in different magazines, because a lot of older women in particular don't have the framework that, let's say, the millennial generation has about apps and online dating, and what are the rules of the game? What's the netiquette that governs this? Don't ever have dinner with someone you haven't met. I'm going to tell you, don't share a long meal. I once had breakfast with a client on an internet date, and it was like a few texts back and forth, maybe a phone call. I will never meet someone unless I've at least had a phone call, so I hear their voice, because I'm an auditory oriented person. In terms of neuro-linguistic programming, I operate mostly from what I hear first. And you got to, here's the deal, everybody, we're animals, and it's just like dogs. And you know what happens when two dogs meet? Back ends, right? We got to do that on an energetic level, maybe even on a literal, not the butt, but on a literal level, because we need to take in the pheromones of someone to know whether there's a compatibility. This is also hard science. And so escalating from texting to a phone call to a dinner, nah. Starbucks, coffee bean, whatever it takes for you. Have a coffee where it can be 20 minutes if you know it is not going to work. Don't schedule yourself into a locked position. I've written many stories about this as a widow who started dating again. And these are my comedy stories, because we have to also keep it light, right? We really do.
Right. Well,
so that's all I'm going to say about it.
Great advice. And something happened for me too that I didn't expect when I went back into the dating field of 4 or 5 years ago, and coming in contact, recognizing or being more open to, I guess is really the accurate way of saying it, the men's vulnerability and what's going on for them at this period of time. And I've shared the story in terms of, you know, my guy now hadn't been in a relationship for a long time. And so he had some anxiety that he shared with me. And it just opened up this deep connection for me, and understanding and a sensitivity, when realizing that I hadn't even thought that the guy has anxieties too. You know, I've got my own, and I'm worried about how my body looks, and he's got his own going on.
Well, men suffer from a tremendous layer of performance anxiety because they look at sex as performance, part of the reason. And so, tactically speaking, if we can allow them to experience it, the sensory, the sensations, the pleasure, the connection, the senses, even opening the senses to a partner, they're going to get out of having to perform. I think that if we look at how sex works in the male body versus the female body, I'm talking about biologically here, men are a lot more vulnerable because they have to produce this thing called an erection, and then they have to sustain it. Women can fake it. It's a lot easier to fake it. Now, I'm not a fan of faking anything, especially orgasm. I believe in authentic relationships because if they're not authentic, they're going to break apart anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Falsehood is not a foundation for a sustainable relationship. So there's something so vulnerable about men who haven't been with someone for a while. And I, it's really interesting. My compassion level right now is higher, I think, for men than for women, because I don't think men know what to do. I don't think they know where to go. I don't think they know how to be. And as a sex doctor, I also understand the frailties of erection and not knowing how to control ejaculation. There's also a condition known as delayed ejaculation or delayed orgasmic function, which is men who can't release when they want to with a partner. Usually they can alone and they can't with a partner. And I have a couple right now I'm working with, and she just wants him to come inside her during penetrative sex or sexual intercourse, and he can't. And part of the reason is, and this is an epidemic as well, he had habituated himself to use of porn, and therefore he had a systemic way that he would touch himself that no other human being could replicate. And he's a little afraid. He's a little afraid. It was such a powerful session we had recently on Zoom where he was able to say in front of her, I'm holding out that last part of me because I'm terrified about giving you my all and then you may leave me. Wow. So look at where sex becomes the speaking part of us as humans in relationship or not in relationship. And so there's something so beautiful to me about being able to give men permission to find their power again, to engage with a partner as an equal, and for women to create this space for them to show up that way for heterosexuals.
Yeah.
It's a tough time right now.
It is, and I'm so glad you talked about the compassion for men, because I think that can help women who are feeling intimidated to go out in the dating world again and who are convinced that they aren't going to have any kind of relationship anymore, to recognize that the men out there are struggling too. So maybe that compassion.
They are. Doesn't mean there aren't a-holes in the world. There are, but they don't have a gender necessarily. They can be of any gender identification. So you've got to feel it. You've got to feel. There's something that I'm looking at right now as a clinician and as a sexual scientist, which is the role that feeling safe plays. And I think there's something about feeling safe, and it's not palpable. It's very ephemeral. It doesn't have a shape you can put it in. It doesn't have concrete language we can put around it. But there's something about feeling safe that allows us to let go in sex. And whether it's a penis and a vagina, and men who either lose their erection or can't ejaculate inside a partner who may be a beloved partner, there's something about not feeling safe. I had a male once who couldn't ejaculate in his partner, and 2 weeks later we discovered that she was actually raging at him and cruel to him, and that relationship ended. And it was really, his penis was actually his radar. It was speaking to him, to his heart. Isn't that beautiful? But the same thing is true of people who won't kiss. So if I have couples who can do anything, but they don't kiss, or they're not in harmony kissing. And they have to learn how to find that attunement, that alignment, because kissing is actually an activation. There's a biological reason that many humans kiss first. And it activates all kinds of neurological responses, neurochemicals, breathing through the mouth, eye contact, smelling. I mean, it's magical what kissing does. And if we have a couple who's not kissing, or kissing is like a yuck, or it's like a, that's kissing, or it's down the throat kissing, it's a turnoff and a push away. And so this is an area where if you're in a relationship, those of you who are watching, and kissing is where it's not quite working, you need to really focus in on that.
Mm-hmm. And one more question in terms of dating, and then I had a question as far as people who are in a committed relationship. But what about the sexual diseases? I understand it's increased for those who are over 50, yes, over 60, and I just wanted to see if there was something you could speak to about that and staying safe.
Absolutely practice safer sex. The only safe sex is no sex. Do not believe what people tell you. There are two dirty words in the English language. People lie. So those are kind of the only dirty words. And what's so important is protection of yourself. Take care of yourself first. Always be selfish. That's what selfish means in that good sense. And practicing safer sex may mean abstaining from exchange of bodily fluids. It might mean using condoms. It might mean experimenting with condoms, because nonoxynol 9 or 15 or all the other anti-spermicidal ingredients can also wreak havoc with the vaginal lining for women, and we don't need that. And also, it's very important to, I think, get to know someone. Now, I'm going to say something that is counterintuitive to that. It's also okay to have a sex date, and that's all it is, for your pleasure, for your whatever, fill in the blank. Enjoyment, empowerment, connection, feeling alive, not feeling old, whatever it is. It's perfectly okay if you're making a conscious, healthy choice for you. But you got to play safe, and you've got to employ safer sex strategies. You know, there are dental dams that are flavored, that are rubber sheets that can be used across the vulva for oral. Now, it's not necessary. I mean, a partner could have oral herpes simplex 1, but sometimes 2 can live on the lips. You don't want that. And there are transmissible, we call them STIs today, sexually transmissible infections rather than diseases, because they're really something that comes in and then you can treat it medically and it can go out. But some of them last forever. And there are new drugs. I'm noticing on the nightly news, a lot of new drugs around Hep C. It used to be no way to get rid of Hep C. That can be sexually transmitted. We also see, speaking of medications, all kinds of ads for the ED pills, erectile dysfunction, not as many as we used to, because really it's an overblown, I'll say, claim. The erection pills help males sustain an erection but not produce an erection. So if you have a guy, I know we're talking about not safer sex, but moving into, if you're heterosexual and you're with a man who has erectile difficulties, it might help him to take one of the 4, there are 4 now, Viagra, Levitra, most people don't use these anymore, Cialis, which is the preferred one, and daily Cialis, which means it's in your blood, it's in his bloodstream all the time, takes it once a day in a microdose. So he's ever ready. And the thing is, sometimes it's about like the man you were describing who became your partner, who hadn't had a relationship in so many years, and like, ooh, performance anxiety. Of course, sometimes men just need a booster to regain their sexual self-confidence. Sometimes one pill does it for them. It's like, oh my God, he's working, they might say. Sometimes they have names for their penises and other terms that we have to be comfortable hearing as clinicians. But really, there's a lot going on in the pharmaceutical arena, and safer sex is something that's very important. The HIV rates are very high, over 50, but STI rates in general. And for some people who were married young and now we're in our later years with the same person for years and years and years, the idea of having a condom is like alien. You're not going to get pregnant if you're postmenopausal or peri questionable. But yeah, you need to protect yourself. It's not worth it.
Mm-hmm.
You're not worth it.
Yeah. And what about low libido for women? Any suggestions on how to address that?
So I am not a proponent of the medical model. I'm a proponent of a holistic model. My clinical model is a 5-part integrative model of mind, emotions, body, which includes body image and behaviors, energy, and spirit. So all 5 parts need to be in flow. But there is a huge push toward a pharmaceutical remedy for low libido in women. There's one pharmaceutical medication that is out that flibanserin, I can't say it properly because it's too hard to say, flibanserin, also known as Addyi. I don't even know if it's still on the market. I believe it is, prescribed by a gynecologist or your primary care physician. Huge controversy over it. It affects neurochemistry and serotonin reuptake in particular. Mucking with your brain and your neurochemistry, to me, as a holistic clinician, not the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
And the way to go is you have to look at those 5 parts. You have to look at your mind, your emotional self, your physical self, and how you feel about your body, your energy. Like if you're tired all the time, or you're drinking every night and then you're caffeinating all day, that's an energy issue and a body issue, a health issue. And your spirit to me is like that pilot light. It's like the little blue flame under the gas that you can turn up. I hope you can. I hope you do.
Mm-hmm.
Or it can just stay there latent. It doesn't ever go out. I don't believe it goes out.
Mm-hmm.
That's your spirit. And also we're in an era where, even in this beautiful series you're creating, where there are spiritual leaders who can create a spiritual pathway, like Tantra. I love Tantra.
Mm-hmm.
I love the eye gaze process of connecting with a partner that literally hooks up our right hemisphere of our brain, where the emotional connective side gets activated, and we're like in alignment. Maybe mirror neurons get fired off. It's really cool. From the new science is now substantiating the old ways of new age philosophy. It's so cool what's going on here. But I don't know if that answers the question for you.
Yeah, I was curious.
It's complicated.
Well,
I was going to say, and there's nothing wrong with having a workup around your hormones. And there's nothing wrong with getting the right kind of hormonal supplementation if you're a candidate for it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like testosterone is one that I know that I've actually tried and feel like it's been helpful for me.
Yes. Mm-hmm. You could try testosterone. You could even try estrogenation, which you should if you have dry, thin vaginal walls. Mm-hmm. There's topical, there's pills. I mean, there's so many formulations of all of this, including customized formulations at pharmacies that are compounding pharmacies to make a unique cream or a tablet for you and where your chemistry is at hormonally. Mm-hmm. And also, I'm a big fan of, and I use a topical human growth hormone homeopathic product that is phenomenal. And that really is not reducing aging in a dramatic way, but is sustaining wellness. It's promoting things like hair growth and healthy skin and energy. Mm-hmm. So, there are many, many, many routes to sustaining wellness and health and kicking aging in the butt just a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And to me, and I've had this discussion with girlfriends too, I think a great aphrodisiac, I know from my current relationship, is the fact that my guy lives an hour and a half from me. So we get together on weekends and it's much more exciting. And we're having that space, because I think everyone needs their own time. And sometimes like living in the same household with your partner can make it difficult to really find your space again, to come back together and have an exciting relationship. And so
absolutely,
we've been laughing about the fact, well, the Queen of England and her husband have their own bedrooms. Why is it that we, as even when we're married, we don't think it's okay to go have separate bedrooms?
Exactly. I give everybody permission to have distance. Yes. In fact, that's one of the killers of sex and one of the killers of desire is enmeshment. And it's like you're 24/7, especially if you work at home and especially if you work together. the other thing is, it's called the R factor, the resistance factor. There's a name for it. And it's wonderful because it puts a block, a perceived obstacle, it's called. The Erotic Mind is a book that one of my deceased colleagues wrote, very important book. Jack Morin was his name. And he had a formula: excitement equals attraction plus perceived obstacle. Now, isn't that profound? So the perceived obstacle is, well, it's Tuesday and I've got clients till 7 tonight. I guess I'm not going to see Jack tonight, but Friday's only 3 days away, or whatever it is, till I see him. So that's real. And I'm glad that you have that experience. Yay!
Yeah, and I think, and even for those who do live together, I think that, like you say, you can create that. And so, how about some tips for spicing up the relationship when you do have a committed relationship? I know you and I went and got our we got something to show too as part of the process.
Well, spicing up, really, it's a hard question. One of the things that I'm a big advocate of is putting it on the calendar. Talking to Siri, I have a Siri in my watch, talking to Siri and saying, set an alarm for 8:20 tonight. And it's like, what? Siri will never talk back and say what. But to say to yourself, this is a priority. That's a way to spice it up. Because what I notice with my sexless couples and my disenchanted couples who have infrequent sex is that they're too busy. Here's another tip. Turn off the damn phone. Tell Siri to take a hike. Because the more you habituate and you're tethered to this kind of a device, you are at the effect of the outside world, not at cause in your own world. I tell my couples, take an e-fast while you have dinner together. How about this really radical concept called sitting across from each other, no electronic devices going, and actually looking at each other and having a conversation? Wow. How about a sustained hug? Not a kind of, glad to see you, honey, but a hug that lasts a minute. Just like an eye gaze, left eye to left eye with your partner, that lasts a minute. A minute feels like forever when you're out of sync with having time slow down. Slowing down is one of the secrets to lasting sex and love. And it includes being present, being embodied. One of the things that is happening because of our electronic world is that we're living neck up. When you're at the effect of one of these, what you're doing is your mind's constantly, your eyes, your mind, your fingers. You're not living in your body. You're not living in your sensual self. You're not living in your sense-based self. And you're not living in the energies of where your pleasure can happen. Not that there's not pleasure in seeing, a happy text from somebody you like or love or are cyber dating, but because you need to be in your body. So those are some of the tips. And I think getaway sex is really hotter. I hear this from all of my clients, and, been there, done that. Have a weekend getaway once every so often that you plan to a romantic setting so that you're not looking at the dirty laundry or, the dog dishes or the whatever. That's your daily life that brings you down vibrationally. Go spend the money, even if it's a Motel 6 for 3 hours. Just have getaway sex. Does that help?
It does, definitely. And I mean, I love the ritual aspect too. It's like scheduling it, but then you can, make sure you've got the candles, or you've turned off your phones, and you're making each other the priority.
Yes, I wrote a whole book called The Complete Idiot's Guide to Sensual Massage. It came out many years ago. It's out of print, but it's still available online. And it's actually a cookbook for foreplay, a cookbook for being sensual, a cookbook it's like an aphrodisiac cookbook without the food, without the recipes.
So tell
I
me.
have a friend who wrote one of those called Simple Sexy Food by Linda DeVillers.
Ooh.
And it is an aphrodisiac cookbook and the history of aphrodisiacs. So that's a pretty neat thing to do as well.
Yeah, that's one to explore. And so one last question before we wrap up. Tell us about those pumps that you showed me earlier. When to bring those out?
Okay, so when we were chatting before we started this conversation, I said, sexy is an inside job, especially for older women. Like, you got to feel sexy to be sexy. You can project sexy with any look, any shape. It's an energy field. So I was just recently in Poland, where that's my international training hub. Every spring I go there and train professionals. I do retreats, I do live training, speeches, Facebook Live, the whole bit. And I always go shopping. And so I want you to walk your talk. And these are my sexy pumps. Here's one of the shoes. Here's the heel. Can you see it? Here's the heel. It's black lace on a silver leather.
Woohoo!
Here's what is so hilarious. They're so comfortable to walk in.
Really?
And it's got the toe cleavage available. These are biological cueing devices, by the way. But these are my sexy. Come and get it pumps. Every woman needs a pair of those.
Mine aren't quite as fancy as yours.
They're pretty cute, and they have the toe reveal, so this is good. Here's the key. It's how it makes us feel. It's not what the guy or the girl or the whatever feels about us. It's how we feel. When I put these babies on, I'm hot.
Absolutely.
It feels great. I just feel good. So there
Absolutely. It is. That is what it's about, because that emanates from there. It radiates from there. So
it does. Yeah.
So as we wrap up, is there any last bit of wisdom that you want to share with all who are attending?
Well, yes, and that is, I have this kind of phrase that I use, and I have for many years, and it's celebrate your sexual self. And so allow yourself to feel what celebrate really means. Don't shut yourself down. Don't should on yourself. Don't shame yourself. Don't compare yourself, but celebrate your sexual self every minute of every day, and your life is going to change.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. And I understand you have a free gift for those who attended the session.
Yeah, I do. So because I am holistic in my orientation, and I also have done a lot of media, I'm the host of over 40 couples sexual enhancement DVD programs, one of which is Modern Kama Sutra. And I took all of the ancient teachings of the Kama Sutra, and we shot 3 DVD programs, which are available streaming online at lovingsex.com or through my website. And they're awesome. They're just awesome. They're real couples taking my teaching in a workshop and then practicing it on camera. And one of them was about pleasuring the woman first. And that inspired me to write an ebook called For Her Pleasure. And it's for all of you. And you can use it alone or you can use it with a partner. But it's really about claiming that beauty and that juiciness, that sexiness that you are, getting to know your body and getting to be able to celebrate that from an empowerment perspective. So I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you so much. That's a great gift. Oh, Dr. Patty, thank you so much. It was so fun having this time with you today.
It was great. I enjoyed it immensely. And I hope everyone got great value out of it.
Oh, I'm sure. Yes.
Great. Thanks so much. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. What a great session. So I invite you now to get out your file label or your blank piece of paper and write down one takeaway, one thing that you want to do differently as a result of today's session. Put it with your journal, and we'll come back to that at the end of the retreat. Thank you for being here with us today. We look forward to having you at the next session.